Well, welcome to the 700 Club. The number of migrants crossing the southwestern border is on pace for the highest level in 20 years. Republicans are calling it the Biden border crisis, but the White House has also been calling it a challenge.
Well, now Congress is moving once again to take on illegal immigration as they try to deal with the dreamers who are already here in the country. As Jenna Browder reports, the two parties remain far apart.
With migrants pouring across the border and the number of children coming into the country on pace to set a record, lawmakers are rushing to solve at least part of the immigration problem with legislation. In a near party line vote, the House approved a bill Thursday that would give legal status to around 2 million dreamers brought to the U.S. illegally as children. The bill also extends to hundreds of thousands of people let into the country for humanitarian reasons. And in another measure, the House voted to give similar protections to 1 million farm workers here illegally. But both bills face an uphill battle in the Senate. Republicans insist any immigration legislation must also strengthen border security.
Legalizing anybody under these circumstances will lead to even more illegal immigration.
Senator Lindsey Graham, who has for years joined Democratic Senator Dick Durbin in sponsoring the DREAM Act, signaling he's now hesitant to move it across the finish line.
Biden has lost control of the U.S.-Mexican border. Until he regains control by implementing policies that work, it's going to be very hard to do the dreamers or anybody else.
This week, he joined with Representative Maria Salazar on the Dignity Act, which combines legal protections for undocumented immigrants and border security.
I'm offering dignity. What I'm offering is the art of the possible. I'm offering to bring those people out of the shadows. The ones who TPS and everybody who's been here for more than 5 years and does not have a criminal record.
Democrats argue dreamers and farmers need that protection now.
Dreamers are doctors, nurses, lab technicians, contact tracers, and job creators.
This all happening amid serious concerns about the surge of migrants on the border. The White House has labeled it a challenge and steadfastly refused to call it a crisis. But in what seems to be a slip-up, Press Secretary Jen Psaki used that exact word Thursday.
There have been expectations set outside of unrelated to any vaccine doses or requests for them that they would be partners in dealing with the crisis on the border. And there have been requests unrelated that for doses of these vaccines.
And for years, Congress has been unable to come up with a solution for the immigration problem. And with Democrats and Republicans holding steady, it doesn't appear they'll be able to do it this time around either. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
It's unfortunate we're still in an election cycle, and it just doesn't seem to go away. And so on one side, on the administration side, they've got to change the lingo so it's no longer a crisis, so people can't call it the Biden border crisis. They can't call it for what it is. But let's keep this in mind. President Biden himself called it a crisis just last month. Here's the quote. "We cannot solve the humanitarian crisis at our border without addressing the violence, instability, and lack of opportunity that compels so many people to flee their homes." That was in his executive order on February 2nd, 2021. So here we are in March, and suddenly everything has to change, and we have to call it a challenge. Well, if you're focused on the semantics and not focused on the problem, then we're never going to solve anything. And as a nation, you absolutely have to enforce your borders. And as the executive, you absolutely have to enforce the law of the land. You can't say, well, I'm going to have this open pass. Well, when you do, that's going to spur an incredible wave of migration. It's not just coming from Mexico and Central America and South America. Ecuador has an open visa, and all kinds of people from all over the world are now flocking and joining that caravan in hopes that they can come to the United States. And you have to send a clear signal to them and to the world. No, you're not going to be granted asylum. You're not going to be granted immigration status. We have to enforce our borders. That's why you have nation states. Same time, we've got to solve the immigration problem that currently exists, what to do with people inside the country, and whether they're dreamers or or however they arrived here, we have to come to some kind of consensus. In the current election climate, I mean, you would think we've already had one in November, and can we please stop and start governing? No, we're back into yet another election cycle, and everybody gearing for the midterms, and so they're trying to make this a campaign issue that will dog the Biden administration, dog the Democrats, and as a result, you get into this polarization and you can't get anything done. Now more than ever, we need to pray for our nation, pray for our leadership, that can we please come together? Can we please be one nation under God, indivisible? These divisions are really hurting us. In other news, the Senate has confirmed one of President Biden's most controversial nominees in an extremely close party line vote. Ephraim Graham has that story from our CBN newsroom. Ephraim?
Gordon, Javier Becerra is set to become the Chief of Health and Human Services after a 50-49 vote. It was the closest margin of any of President Biden's cabinet picks so far. Conservatives argued Becerra has no health care experience, and multiple pro-life leaders have blasted him for his activist support of abortion rights, calling him an extremist and saying he's persecuted anti-abortion groups, including taking legal action against them. About 50 groups angered by big tech censorship and deplatforming of conservative voices nationwide are calling on the states to take on the social media giants. Paul Strand shows us how.
This letter from activist groups asks the Attorney General in each state to go after big tech for basically lying. It specifically targets Twitter, Facebook, and Google YouTube, raising questions about how each company claims objectivity, yet chooses sides.
If a company tells you, as all these big tech companies have done, that they are neutral and then acts in an opposite manner, that may be a violation of local laws.
Media Research Center's Brent Bozell says 19 states are already fighting back with existing law.
Consumer laws that are on the books to protect citizens from unfair trade practices, and certainly what is going on with big tech applies directly to that.
Some of these tech companies are so large and so monopolistic and so abusive in their actions that we have to take actions.
Both Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and Arkansas Attorney General Leslie Rutledge are joining the fight.
We're part of these lawsuits, part of these investigations.
Rutledge is going further by pushing a bill to punish deplatforming and censoring.
To seek penalties under the Arkansas Deceptive Trade Practices Act with a penalty of a violation up to $10,000 per violation.
Big tech, though, could have something to hide, as Twitter is suing Paxton in an attempt to stop his investigation. In its suit, it accuses Paxton of unlawfully abusing his authority as the highest law enforcement officer of the state of Texas to intimidate, harass, and target Twitter.
Big tech is just a small group of uncensored, unchecked individuals who decide they want to silence us.
And Mississippi's Lynn Fitch saw that firsthand after Twitter didn't like a video she posted about human trafficking.
I put it up. Within 37 seconds, they took it down at Twitter. If Twitter or any of these platforms can just be so cavalier that they take down an attorney general, wow, that means they're going to take all of us down.
Dan Gaynor warns all those targeted need to figure out now how to communicate outside big tech's infrastructure so these bullies can't gang up and cherry pick which sites and speech to silence.
The conservative movement needs to move ahead building its own infrastructure, because as we saw with Parler particularly, that infrastructure can go away almost overnight.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Turning now to the Middle East, a major historical find in Israel announced this week dozens of Dead Sea Scroll fragments, including parts of Old Testament manuscripts. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, some of the finds go back more than 10,000 years, and they were not easy to reach.
Since 2017, Israeli archaeologists have surveyed the ravines and caves of the Judean desert. The Israel Antiquities Authority put together the 4-year project to prevent robbers from looting priceless artifacts. Work included rappelling more than 200 feet down to one of the main caves. Inside, the team dug and sifted soil not touched for nearly 2 millennia. Their work uncovered biblical treasures, including pieces of scrolls nearly 2,000 years old.
Wow.
Then they made the precarious trek up the cliffs taking the treasures to the Israel Museum.
It's a great day. Actually, it's a day where we can show our work in the last 4 years in the desert. It's Sisyphic work, but you can see that we found many significant artifacts and items that belong to the state of Israel.
Perhaps the most important finds are these scrolls from the book of Zechariah and Nahum. These are the first biblical scrolls found in the Judean desert in nearly 60 years. The Jews who fled the Romans in 70 AD brought this scroll to the cave.
They took with them only what was most important to them and what was essential for surviving, and this is one of the things that they took. And this tells us something about how strong their belief was.
The recovered portion of the scroll comes from the book of Zechariah that says, "These are the things you are to do. Speak the truth to one another. Render true and perfect justice in your gates. And do not contrive evil against one another. And do not love perjury, because all those are things that I hate, declares the Lord." The team also uncovered the 6,000-year-old body of a child and found an intact basket that they sent for carbon dating.
When the results came back, we were amazed. It is 10,500 years old. It's so unique. It's the only example that looks like this from that time in Israel and maybe in the world.
The find shed light on Jewish history. These coins from the Bar Kokhba revolt against the Romans carry inscriptions that refer to the times of King David and King Solomon. These coins are from the time of Jerusalem's destruction in 70 AD.
The scrolls that we found, the fugitives, the coins, the weapons from the rebellions. But it's not only the story of the Jewish people, the story of the humankind.
Back in the Judean desert, archaeologists say there are still hundreds of caves left to explore, with the promise of finding more biblical scrolls and historic artifacts. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Israel Museum, Jerusalem.
Incredible work and incredible find. Gordon?
Well, every day in Israel, it seems like they're kicking over a stone and finding more archaeology that proves the truth of the Bible, the history of the Bible. And it's wonderful to see it unfold. Here, yet more scrolls from the Herod's temple period. These are written in Greek, and it's fascinating to see how much they were treasured by people. Here, people literally fleeing for their lives from Roman soldiers, and the thing they want to take with them is a scroll of the prophet. If you want to learn more about archaeology in Israel, we've got something for you. It's a whole series, archaeological series called Written in Stone. The latest episode is House of David. And so if you want to see this wonderful documentary showing the proof that archaeology has that there was a King David, there was a David dynasty, the House of David. It's yours for a gift of any dollar amount. You'll get instant 4K streaming access. You'll also get a DVD that you can watch and share with friends. All you have to do is call us, 1-800-700-7000, or go to cbn.com, written in stone, or just text King David to 51555. Again, for a gift of any dollar amount, what your gift will go to is producing more documentaries on Israel, more documentaries through CBN Films like I Am Patrick. We're working on one right now about the existence of the Bible, how the Bible came to be. We need your support in order to pay for the production costs. So if you'd like to contribute to that, give us a call, 1-800-700-7000.